It takes a
Hey, I'm Rod, and this is
David, hi.
And this is the first edition of Our Comics, where we'll just do a weekly rundown of what's been happening in just one chosen Marvel comic, and eventually we might even expand. This week we have chosen Thunderbolts 151, titled A Ghost Story. Now this edition moved on from last month's edition, where Crossbones had ended up getting a bit fried up after he got a laser ability for
a big fight with Captain America. Grouse.
So what happened? There was a loss of Crossbones. As I said, he had done something wrong, which was essentially laser people, to make it simply, and he's been knocked off the team. So the story kind of hit a moot point where they're in between two major events, it seems like, which was the Thunderbolts 150th episode and whatever is happening next month, which we will get onto. Now, Crossbones initially joined the team, obviously, to be a counterpoint to Luke Cage, but I don't think this worked all that well.
I found it quite interesting, though, because he was very effective. Like, he was always one of the members out doing things. Like, he'd kill hundreds of ninjas.
Even though he was, most likely the most useless member of the team.
Yeah, because he didn't have any powers. So it was an interesting mix.
But, look, I don't know. I don't think it worked in the end, because just the rest of the team is kind of Juggernaut, Moonstone, and Ghost, who Ghost himself isn't a powerhouse, but he's fairly effective, and you've got two very strong people there, so I don't know what purpose he's up. But the actual story was a Ghost story, which filled in Ghost's backstory. Now, Ghost joined the Thunderbolts back in 120, when Norman Osborn was still in charge, after helping him out in Dark Avengers #1, but he's been a long-term character and an enemy of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Now, there's the whole thing that it sits there and explains what's his, exciting history's been about, which, so it fleshes him out. He's always been an interesting character, but he has very little about him because he's so, defensive. I've been reading on a few forums recently, CBRs, when I look at it regularly, and people seem to be saying, oh, he's probably lied about this, but I actually don't think he's lied at all. He's probably told the truth here because he knows he's untouchable. And the fact that since he's so untrustworthy, he doesn't actually have to lie. He can just make up anything. He can tell the truth and know that people may or may not believe him anyway, so he can manipulate that. And it kind of screwed over Moonstone, who was doing what she normally does, which is try to
manipulate everyone, just try and get what she's wanting.
Manipulate men, particularly. So yeah, I enjoyed that, which it was a different issue, and the fact that nothing actually happened apart from a bit of Ghost talking is actually a very good issue for this.
Yeah, also a new member of the team.
And we'll get onto that last.
But I've always really quite liked Ghost as a character. He's always been rather mysterious and angry, but it was good to see a bit more of him because he's always sort of been very. You don't know much about him, and you actually get why he's so suspicious of everyone.
Yeah, he actually has a reasonable reason. But I mean, it's a bit cliche that he was screwed over by the corporate people, but it actually, makes sense. Like, oh, well, fair enough. And he sat there, he's got revenge, and as he saw in Thunderbolts 150, he actually doesn't. He's not neither good nor evil. He just has his opinion, and he's fighting for his opinion to be true. Sadly, that kind of labels him as a villain most times. But he has sort of heroic aspects to him, but it's more to further his own causes.
It's interesting though, because one of his beefs with Tony Stark's recently just been, wiped away because Tony Stark doesn't have a massive corporation anymore, and Ghost has sort of gone.
So he's a small businessman, really.
So Tony Stark's been like, Ghost has been like, oh, okay, I want to be friends.
Yeah. And finally, Hyperion has been listed to join the team to add another powerhouse to the team.
So I don't know much about him. Explain.
Well, I can't figure out which Hyperion this is. It's either Zib Ran, who is the member of Squadron Sinister, who is their kind of analogues to DC's Justice League, and Hyperion is essentially Superman. So if you want to know what he does, just look up Superman, and that's what Hyperion does. So he's either that Hyperion who disappeared mysteriously without being defeated properly, or he's from the Exiles all the way back in number 38, King Hyperion, who was another evil one, who popped up in Age of Heroes number 3 fighting the Blue Marvel, who's a sort of a Superman-esque character. But
was he evil or?
Hyperion is evil, just
okay.
So you know. And the fact that he's joined the team adds another powerhouse to the team, so we're all set up to some exciting event which needs, the Juggernaut, who is one of the most powerful people on Earth, Moonstone, who's up there.
Wild Thing!
And, Hyperion now, so it must be something scary that's coming along. Finally,
while we're on the topic of Thunderbolts, I want to talk about their art style, which is something I found very different about a lot of other comics I've seen out there. It has a real pop art style, which has got lots of dots and a lot of the shading and stuff like that, which gives it a real different look to a lot of comics and very unique. And it's so appropriate for Thunderbolts because it's so all these characters, you don't know if they're good, you don't know if they're bad. It's so very appropriate, very
The caricatures.
wasn't clean. It's very nice. Yeah.
And yeah, pretty much. I like everyone's depiction within the comics except for the Juggernaut, who I think he just doesn't look right.
Yeah, actually, I know what you mean there.
And especially when he doesn't have when he has his mask on, he's okay. But when he doesn't have it on, he kind of looks like a big giant rat. If you go back a few issues, there's one where he's in medical and he just looks bizarre. But I've noticed that the guy who is it? It's Kev Walker who is drawing all this. He kind of gives men giant arms. I've noticed. If you look at any character who's a man apart from Ghost, they all have just ridiculously big arms. So the problem with the Juggernaut, who already has giant arms, they become even gianter. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
And yeah, so we both recommend Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
Because like it kind of after Dark Reign and Siege and everything, it became a bit moot like where was the team going. But honestly, I felt it's picked up in the last issue or two. Like it's gone back onto its winning thing, and it's clearly one of the better titles Marvel's producing.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So
yeah, so we hope you read them. We'll be back soon, and hopefully next week we'll be reviewing the Fantastic Four.
Yay.